From Peacock, IGN, and Realm, this is Rise or Die, the official companion podcast to the Peacock original series, Those About to Die. I'm your host, Dana Schwartz, and on this podcast, I'll be talking to the cast and crew about bringing their stunning and brutal version of ancient Rome to life. Anyone familiar with visual effects in film and TV knows that most everything is added in post-production after filming the series with actors has wrapped. But what happens when you flip that on its head and all the crowd scenes, sprawling backdrops, and horse races need to be complete before filming can even start? On episode 2 of Rise or Die, I sat down with visual effects supervisor and action unit director Pete Travers to learn what went into creating some of these spectacular special effects throughout the series. And we discussed a new technology the team used to film called an LED stage. Those About to Die is such an effects-heavy series. We have gladiator fights, chariot races, and you're also just creating an entire city that, doesn't actually exist anymore. What to you was the most exciting part of this brand new project when you first heard about it?
I think you just said it. It's bringing Rome to life. There's always a misconception that we have kind of one snapshot of Rome. But reality, Rome was around for 500 years, and so Rome was constantly evolving. But nevertheless, probably the most important thing we had to figure out right away was to acquire the latest layout of what Rome actually was during this time period. One of the things that really makes the show complicated and rewarding is that we shot so much of our work on an LED stage. LED stage work, which is relatively new, kind of turns everything around, certainly for visual effects. All the deadlines are in post-production. But this makes it all go to pre-production.
Because you have to have everything rendered before the actors start shooting.
Exactly. The challenges that it brings is that, we had to put a full crowd inside Circus Maximus and then have that on the stage for when we shot it. So what did the crowd look like? Well, typically in visual effects, you get from the costume department, the attire, the robes, all the wardrobe stuff. That all can be acquired in a typical show pretty much at the end of pre-production, even during production. So when you're starting to build your digital crowd characters. Well, we needed to do it and build our crowd system very, very early on in pre-production. And that's just one example of the hundreds of things that we had to coordinate. You kind of become this digital backbone, I think would be the best term for it, for a show, where wardrobe, production design, the art department, the ADs, scouting, all of these things all start to kind of centralize towards, I'd say visual effects, but it's not really visual effects, it's virtual production. And so we really became this coordinating hub for the show.
Yeah.
With that, to answer the question about Rome, is we can't afford to have Rome built by the end of pre-production, which is still early in a show. We had to have it now.
You had to build Rome in a day, is what you're saying.
We've had to build Rome in a day, exactly. And so we worked with a company that had been doing VR projects for Rome. They were called Faber Cordial, and they had the best version of Rome to date. They were gracious enough to loan us basically their latest and greatest. And then we took that, sat down with a production designer and the director, Roland, and sit there and go, okay, what do we like about it? What do we not like about it? But they had already for 10 years been working with historians and archaeologists. So it was the best head start that we could possibly have.
Was there one aspect of Rome itself, of the building digitally, that was the most challenging or took the most time?
Yeah, there were certain areas where we really decked them out. There's some kind of key areas in Rome. The big areas are outside and inside Circus Maximus. Not just inside the Colosseum, but outside the Colosseum, the piazza outside the Colosseum. And also, too, because the Colosseum is being built during the episodes, we had to have multiple stages of the construction of the Colosseum. And that all had to be built in Unreal. And it had to play in real time on the VP wall. But if you do things in the right process, because of the amount of work we did on the front end. And it was an extreme challenge. This is one of the most challenging shows I've ever worked on. I swear people are going to think we shot this stuff outside, and it was all done on a VP stage in Italy.
I want to talk a little bit about the chariot race scenes, because those scenes were just unbelievable. They're fast-paced, they're like action-packed, we have crashes, we have violence. What type of preparation went into those shoots?
The chariot races are kind of the culmination of all different kinds of prep. So we started the previs right out of the gate. Then you have to break it down and you go, okay, well, how are we going to shoot that shot, that shot, that shot, that shot, right?
Yeah.
You can't put well-paid actors on a 4-horse chariot and have them go around because it's really dangerous, right?
It looks dangerous.
Yeah, we call it a poor man's process, but we use the VP stage. So that's when you have the close-ups of the charioteers where you see their face and you see the character in the show.
So they're riding in a chariot, but they're stationary on a set.
Yep. But we also needed real horses. And, there's a kind of an inherent thing with CG. When you have something that accompanies it, something that's real that you can ground yourself in, CG can look absolutely real.
Yeah.
And so this guy Laszlo, he's Hungarian, and basically they're the best horse trainer riders in Europe.
If you want horses, you call Laszlo.
You call Laszlo, right?
Yeah.
Luckily, we had a kind of a pre-built horse track. Now, I don't want to diminish. There was so much that production design had to kind of enhance the look of it to match the real Circus Maximus. So we analyzed the previs, decided exactly what we could actually shoot with real horses. So we had a number of horses. We only had about 3 chariots, but all the close-ups, all the chariots like kicking up the dirt, a lot of the inserts, but even a lot of the mid shots where you see the horses and stuff, those are all shot real. And so we had this great crew. We had a Scorpio arm, which is basically, it's like an SUV with a big robotic camera arm on it. And they go around and chase the horses. We did all that. We had a drone, we had GoPros, we had a Komodo. The Venice 2 was on the Scorpio. So we had, at some point in time, we had 4 different kinds of cameras all going simultaneously on this track. Just shooting. It was fantastic because oftentimes, like with the GoPros, for example, you kind of place them on the track. I don't know if you've seen, there's some shots where like the chariots ride right over the camera.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That's when we just stuck a GoPro just on the ground. And then we'd have to pick up the camera and play it back and see what we got and so on and so forth.
Oh my God. There's also, without giving anything away, a few very dramatic chariot crashes that look unbelievable. How do you even approach that? Obviously, keeping actors and animals safe.
They're all CG.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the only way you could do it.
And I know you got specifically beautiful white Andalusian horses for this series.
Yeah, we scanned them too. So while we were shooting, we were scanning. And so certainly for all the CG shots, like the wide aerial shots and things like that, where they're all CG, they're using the scans of the horses, the scans of the actors, the scans of the chariots. And that gets back to that idea of the order of events that you typically do on a show, because we could have done that at any point in time during production, but we had to do that in early pre-production. It's a pain in the ass, but it's worth it, because we did an estimation of all the different shots that would have ordinarily been visual effects shots, but they were handled in the VP stage and did not have to be edited. And it's a 2-to-1 ratio in that the show would have been somewhere around 2,700 shots total over the 10 episodes, but only 800 were actually visual effects shots in post.
Wow.
We had over 1,800 shots that we achieved on the VP stage. So basically those backgrounds are ready to go, and they did not have to be edited.
The other amazing spectacle in this show, obviously, is the gladiator fights. You also have a lot of gladiator fights where people are fighting against very dangerous wild animals like lions. Were there ever any real wild animals on set, or were those all CGI?
We had some real animals, but not the featured ones.
Yeah.
The lion was basically a stuntman. He was a guy in like a white lion-colored suit on wires.
So he's playing the role of the lion.
Yeah, again, CG is successful when the actors can feel, first of all, where they're supposed to look and how they're supposed to behave.
How much of what the actor playing the lion is doing in motion capture is reflected in the actual effect of the lion?
Kind of the source and the target, like the lion does a lot of leaping, and so where he leaps from and where he lands, but that's kind of about it. The animators, they've used the trajectory And they try to use that stuff as much as they can, because the CG lion is going to work if the actors that are acting to the lion, like the people that the lion is killing, that their performance is good.
Yeah.
And so we would always be using that. And only when we exhaust the possibility of using the actual actors' performances, then maybe we'll have to override it a little bit. But when the lion is killing one of these guys in the Coliseum, remember, and the actor on the ground was doing a great job of looking like he was getting thrashed about. So the animators just use that, and they basically tracked to the way that he's thrashing and make it look like the lion's doing it. And then when you watch it, you're like, well, okay, well, that looks right, you know?
Yeah.
But you get a performance of all the actors that are in the stage. Once you paint out the stuntman, who's on wires too, you got to paint out the wires that he's hanging on. Then you start adding the CG lion, you know?
Yeah. What do you hope, if someone is fascinated by ancient Rome, what do you hope that Those About to Die adds to the canon or their understanding of this period?
How much Circus Maximus was part of Rome. It could have housed up to 250,000 people.
Oh my God.
And Rome was 1 million people back then. So 1/4 of that city would watch those games. It's not a little thing. It's such a massive component to Rome. You know, Rome was an empire, and the empire needed to be satiated. It needed to be satisfied, you know? The games gave people what sport gives today, which is an outlet. For some people, you might think it's aggression, but I think it's more competition.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. I think for people to watch it and understand that why we like sports today, we've been liking it for a long time.
Pete, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. This is such a delight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
As part of our prep work for this series, we got to see an early screener of the episodes without all of the final rendered effects. They also featured the motion capture actor Pete mentioned, who plays some of the featured lions. So I just had to ask actor Hasheem, whose character Kwame has a few different scenes with that particular lion, and Haukur Jóhannesson, who plays Vigo, how things went on set. We've heard from your director, Roland, and a lot of the crew about filming with this new piece of technology called an LED stage. What was it like recording on the LED stage?
Well, it beats green screen and blue screen, I can tell you that. You're right there. It's all around. It's above you. It feels and looks like you're on the location without the disturbance of weather and stuff like that. So it's very controlled. You can shoot more. And it's a great, I love it. It's a great experience for me.
I totally agree. I mean, the one thing I can always think about, it's the rotating stage. All they need to do is change the background, rotate the stage 360, and now we can shoot it from a different perspective, point of view.
Right, yeah. It's very efficient, isn't it?
I got to watch an early screener of the episodes without all of the final rendered effects.
Right, yeah, I saw that too, yeah.
One of the scenes featured a motion capture actor playing the role of one of the lions. Without any spoilers, Mo, I know you had more than one scene with that lion. What was it like working with a man in a gray suit?
One thing I would have to say is it's big props and shout out to that man in that suit, because he was an amazing lion. I have to tell you this.
It was me.
Oh, that's the spot.
No, it was not. It was not.
He truly did amazing. At first, when I remember, we're going through the schedule, and I knew that it will be a guy, and I was like, okay, cool. So imagination-wise, acting-wise, there's a lot of things that I'd have to, put into mind. But going back to your first question, that LED screen really helped, because it really truly felt like we were in North Africa. That first scene I do have with the lions, you see me and my tribesmen, and we're all in our tribal clothing and with our spears. So that in itself already got me into a whole different place, like mentally and spiritually. So when it came to actually doing that lion hunt, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. But it's not until we wrapped for that day, and then he came to me and he was like, oh man, that was a great scene. I was like, oh, you are the lion. That's the only time.
Jóhannes, one thing that I find so fascinating about your character is the way that he's able to portray the bond between gladiators as something of a brotherhood. How did you go about sort of building that sense of camaraderie and that bonding?
I mean, it's just a matter of finding, the humanity in a situation. situation like that. The guys who are in that gladiator school, they're prisoners, essentially. They don't want to be there. And they can die. Death is imminent at any time. You have to survive. And I think humans will do almost anything to survive. And we see that tested in the show. And it's just a matter of spending time with your fellow actors. And me and Mo kind of depict that friendship that gets born within that gladiator school. And that just happened because we spent time together. We spent time together training. We lived in the same hotel. We drove together in the cars and spent time together and read through the scenes. And that's how you just do it. You just build a real friendship slowly, and then you just deliver that into the story.
What would you say are the most important relationships in Viggo's life?
That's his wife and his son. That's his family. That's part of him. That's his heart. But Mo's character in the show, even though he's an outsider, he becomes part of his family as well. And that's the list. It's wife, son, and Mo, or Kwame.
Next up, I got to speak with Marco Kreuspaintner, who's the director of episodes 4 through 8 on the series. He talked me through his experience with virtual production, as well as described what it's like working with an iconic director like Roland Emmerich on something he does best, visual effects. Can you talk a little bit about what, if anything, you did new on this show that was a little different? Did you take anything from Roland that you wouldn't have necessarily done yourself, or a new technique that you've never done before?
Obviously, he's the master of CGI. There is no doubt about it. Yeah. People like to call him the master of disaster, right? I would say the king of creation. I think he would like that.
That's a great title. I think anyone would like that.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
So for me to learn not only when to invest into an effect, but then obviously also how to do it. And it's very interesting how him and Pete Travers, the CGI supervisor, how they speak about visual effects, because it's not only technical, if you would think. They speak highly philosophically about it. It's about photons hitting the foreground and really on that level. So this was for me a big masterclass when it came to CGI, I have to say. I was saying a very well-paid masterclass. And the virtual stage, it's a huge LED wall. It's 180 degrees. With a turning stage in the middle of it, is a new technique that many producers and studios are scared of, because there were examples in the past where literally almost every shot had to be worked on after they were shot, because people didn't get it right. And we did not have to work on one of these shots because we got it right.
Wow.
As you would normally do it, being in front of blue screen or green screen, which has technical problems, because then you have lots of green or blue spilled to the foreground, just not the potential for the performers, which I found is a very interesting thing that I feel strong about.
Yeah.
That they can obviously see what it will look like. So they have the illusion themselves that they are in that surrounding, which, if you believe it or not, and others say oh no, every actor can imagine. Yes, but it is something else if you can just let that go and concentrate on the character work and not having to do all this kind of imagination work on top of it, I think it buys pretty well into the quality of performance as well. I
was going to say, did you notice a difference with actors on the LED screen as opposed to when actors work with green screen or blue screen?
Yeah, they just said, everybody wants to make Marvel films, but once those actors are on a Marvel set, most of the time it's not that much fun, because it's very technical. As most of the time it is blue screens, where they jump from one box to another one, talk with a tennis ball, which is later going to be a monster, a digital creature. And yes, they do it for the paycheck, but once they're on set, they are not going to love it very much. This technique allows it to make it more fun. And if then there's directors who know how to work with cast on these technical shots and not being too geeky about the whole procedure of making it, but concentrating what it's really about. And that is obviously always emotion and story and character. From a directorial point of view, you have to concentrate on your ultimate material, which are the actors.
With the LED screen, you mentioned that some people get it wrong and then they have to do a lot of work on the back end to fix it. What do you do to get it right?
So now I have to watch out to not give all our secrets away, right?
Yeah.
So it has very much to do with the lighting, which has to be very low key, because basically the LED screen is the light source. mainly. So you have to work with cameras who have a chip that is very light sensitive. So like that comes up to 1600, 1800, even 2000 ASA or higher, which means that the camera chip technically works better than the human eye. And I can tell you, this was the case. There were scenes where like with your eyes, like, do we see that? And then you go to the monitor and see what the camera sees, and it's bright and the colors are there and everything. You say like, wow. I mean, technology has come a long way here, right?
Was this your first time using the LED screen?
Oh yeah, for all of us.
Would you use the LED stage again?
Without even putting a second thought into it. Yes, for certain things. I mean, if you do like a realistic drama, it does not make sense. Why? You know, because obviously it comes with limitations. But this were like for a couple of sets. We also had built the most grand sceneries that you can imagine. Parts of Circus Maximus, the Colosseum, all the Imperial Palace scenes, all the interiors, they're all built on stage and they're looking mind-blowing.
Everything I've seen in the show so far looks amazing. That technology really was incredible.
Oh, thank you. It was a big honor for me, and I hope that the viewers of this show will be excited about it and start to watching it on Peacock, coming out on July 18th.
Finally, I spoke with series director Roland Emmerich last episode about the giant historical undertaking this period piece became. And he mentioned in our conversation some of the successes and challenges that came with using this brand new LED stage technology. Check it out. I love the visual aesthetic of the show, and obviously any period piece it's incredibly ambitious with the production design. What were your references for sort of the visual aesthetic of the show?
I said, we have to do a show where you see and feel Rome. That means we have a lot of visual effect shots, which just show a bird's eye view of Rome. Then, when we went to the ground, we used a technique, it's called virtual stage, the LED stage. And we shot 108 days on that stage. For example, we shot the Colosseum, which was then called the Flavian Amphitheater, inside, because we wanted to kind of have the full control over the light.
Can you talk a little bit about what that LED wall stage is? So basically, does that mean that the actors can see what's going to be projected as they're acting?
Oh, yeah, that they're fully involved in this kind of scene because they see a background, they see some midgrounds, and they act not against green or blue, they act against the real thing. And then when there is a reverse shot, you just turn the whole thing around and shoot the other side.
Yeah.
And then you only have to change the sunlight from the right to the left. And that's it.
As a director, did you notice a difference sort of in performance between using those LED wall stages?
Yes, absolutely. Well, they forgot about what they were doing because they saw whatever was there. So they kind of acted more natural and normal, and they didn't ask so many questions. And it was like kind of totally cool. And it's something I want to use from now on.
What would you say was the biggest challenge of the shoot?
I had a little trouble at the very beginning with the virtual stage.
Yeah.
It's a very complicated technique, and it's very hard to kind of get the foreground and background totally match so that you don't see it.
Yeah.
But then when it worked, it was genius.
You have, a lot of experience with visual effects in films that you've directed up until this point. Did that experience help you, or was this technology so new? What did it feel like starting from scratch?
Well, it's like exactly. It feels like starting from scratch. You have to see how you deal with it. And at the beginning, it was very hard, but then it became easier and easier and easier. And then at the end, it's like second thought.
Yeah.
We always had this problem. What do you do with close-ups during the races? So actually, we kind of tried something out. We rendered in Unreal Engine one kind of half of the horses in the background, all the people, and naturally the Circus Maximus.
Yeah.
And then we put two chariots in front of the camera and moved the camera a little bit, and we were unbelievable real. This was so amazing what you can do with a couple of things.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because we had this idea at one point that we do all the close-ups in blue screen.
Yeah.
And that was like stupid. We didn't have to do that because it was like we shot 3 days for that and created all this material. And there is not one shot besides the shipwrecks, which were done like that.
Is that Unreal Engine the same one that they used to create video games?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing technology. I mean, it looks so seamless.
Yeah, no, it was totally, for me, also super surprising because I said, oh my God, because there was the smoke, the dust, everything was there. You couldn't believe it. And it was the high point, I think, of that wall and that technology overall.
That's all we've got for you on episode 2 of Rise or Die. Thanks again to Pete Travers, Marco Kreuspaintner, Roland Emmerich, Mo Hasheem, and Jóhannes Haukur Jóhannesson for talking to me about how these thrilling scenes were filmed. If you want to see all these incredible effects in action, you've got to check out the series. Next episode, I talk to historical consultant Justin Pollard and costume designer Gianni Castelnuovo about bringing a rarely before seen version of Rome to life, the underbelly. In the meantime, don't forget to stream Those About to Die now, only on Peacock.